Hi, hello. Today we're going to look at doing a cross-channel trip across the English Channel from France to England. This part of France is known as the Cherbourg Peninsula. If we're looking closely, we can see here Cherbourg, a lovely little harbour, or a big harbour actually. Some nice little moorings for small boats here, some lovely restaurants, nice food and nice cheese. But anyway, we've done all that kind of stuff, and now we're wanting to take our boat across the English Channel. Now it looks quite easy here because there's lots of white area. However, we know that this is quite a busy area, and the reason it's a busy area is all the ships wanting to come from the Atlantic Ocean and coming from the Far East up past Portugal and Spain. They're all going to come into, it's almost like a funnel actually. They're going to funnel into here, and they want to make their way up to Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Hamburg, all these big shipping harbours. So all the ships of the world that want to come to this part of Europe are probably going to come through this little gap here. So it does get a little bit busy, but there's some kind of order there, so we're quite happy about that. And as I zoom in closer, you can see we have these things here, which is what we call a traffic separation scheme. And the traffic separation scheme puts all the big ships together groups them up in a nice long line, and anybody going to the east is going to follow this line as to this arrow, and anyone going to the west is going to follow these arrows. Now you can see what happens when they get to the end of here. This big area here is shaded in magenta, or a kind of pink, but we call it magenta. This is like the central reservation of a highway. We're not allowed to go there. We've got to stay in this lane, or we've got to stay in this lane. But what happens here? The lanes finish. Well, when we look further along the chart, we can see there's another separation scheme. So it's not a continuous separation scheme, and they just happen to be at various stages along the English Channel just to guide the ships in. When the ships come out of here, you can see they'll start widening up and getting more space in between each other, but when they come down to the next traffic separation scheme, they have to get focused back into this area here. So we know there's going to be a lot of shipping here, so that's one thing to bear in mind. Maybe we'll do another video on separation schemes later on, because there's quite a lot of information to know. But for the time being, we're setting off from our boat from the Cherbourg Peninsula. We're going to make our approach into Weymouth in sunny Dorset. And the things we've got to be aware of here, this is where we're aiming for. But we've got to get past all this kind of stuff here. You can see there's lots of depth contours, and it suggests that it's quite rocky, and it's quite there are lots of mountains under the water, and these mountains, when the tide comes along and hits these mountains, it all piles up. And you can see here, this is a huge mountain. This is called Portland Bill, or the Isle of Portland, and it's quite high, it's quite rocky. Some very nice hard rocks come here that they built great things like Buckingham Palace and St Paul's Cathedral or whatever from the rock here. So this is the same rock, but it's in the water. So this is the top of the island. And as the island comes down, or as the mountain comes down towards the sea, even though we've got the sea, underneath the sea, the mountain ridge continues. You can see how this would just naturally come along here. So when the tide comes along here, and it can come along at a few knots, it hits this mountain range, and as you'd imagine, all the water bubbles up just like stones in a river. You can see, throw some stones in a river, and what's going to happen? The water's going to move around it and over the top of it, and that's not why we want to be on a ship. So we've got to be a little bit careful about this. So the good news is, when we get closer, we can see that this is the big sandbank we've got to be careful of, the shambles. There's an east shambles light, or buoy, and there's a west shambles light, or buoy. And they're telling us don't go between the two, because the east is saying go to the east, and the west buoy is saying go into the west. How do we know that? Well, you can see here, there's a little sign here, it's like a wine glass. That tells me that this is a west navigation buoy. When you see the buoy itself, there's two little cones on there, and we've got other videos that explain the buoys to you quite nicely. So the other side is the east shambles, and this is like you could say it's like an Easter egg or a diamond, and that means you've got to keep to the east. Okay, so let's have another closer look at what's going to happen when we get closer to Portland Bill. Well, we can see it's quite rocky underneath, and here it's 25 metres and here it's 10 metres, so we can expect there's going to be some water affecting the coming up and affecting the waves, or making the waves actually. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to come fairly close here, but we don't want to go close to this area over here. We want to be close to the land, and it's a nice little run along here. You can see there's lots of water. But let's look at the lighthouse itself. So what does the lighthouse, what information have we got about the lighthouse? So if we, on an electric chart, we're going to give this a click, and we're going to ask for more information. We're going to ask for information about the light. And this special code here, now when you come and do a navigation course with us, a day skipper, yacht master, or whatever course you want to do, we'll explain this code. But I can tell you this bit here. This FL stands for flash, so it's flashing 4 times, and it's a white light. Forget this R is confusing, but it's flashing 4 times white every 20 seconds. Now there's another light there, and this is a fixed red light, so it's not flashing, it's fixed. It means it's on all the time. And this fixed red light is going to guard the Shambles Bank, and I'll explain that in a minute to you. The dia bit, this just tells me that the fog signal is a diaphragm fog signal, it's basically a big trumpet, and this will make a sound every 30 seconds. For Portland Bill, it's something like 3.5 second sound every 30 seconds. So there we are, we're expecting to see a flashing white light 4 times every 20 seconds. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 white flashes, and then darkness, and then after 20 seconds the sequence starts again. Okay, so let's have a look at Portland Bill Lighthouse in more detail. When we go to a paper chart's got a little bit more information for us to see, and you can see here it's a lighthouse. It's flashing group flash 4 every 20 seconds. The 43M, the small m, means meters, and the big M means miles, because miles are bigger than meters. So big M is for miles and little m is for meters. So the white light here, the main light, is flashing 4 times, like now, 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 and then darkness, and then after a 20-second cycle it starts again. And we can see that the light is 43 meters high, so it's quite a big lighthouse, and its visibility is 25 miles, but obviously if it's foggy you're not going to be able to see it 25 miles. But the other bit that's of interest here is the FR, which is the fixed red, which is 19 meters high and visible for 13 miles. So why have they put 2 lights there? We'll come to that just in a minute. So look at the dia bit. This tells me that the fog signal is a diaphragm, and the diaphragm is basically a big trumpet. And it's going to make 1 blast every 30 seconds. So in foggy times, when we can't see the light necessarily, we're going to hear this sound signal, which is it's actually about 3.5 second blast every 30 seconds. We can see these dotted lines here, and they're going to tell us some more information. And basically in this area here you can't see the light, so they're going to put a shield there so the light doesn't shine over the land and keep all the people awake at night. Between this dotted line and this dotted line, also between this dotted line and this dotted line, you don't always get the full 4 flashes. And this gives us some indication as to how far up or down this coast we are. So if we were to be coming here, we won't see the light. When we get here, we'll see 1 flash. Round about here, 2 flashes. Round about here, 3 flashes. And then at this line here, we're going to see 4 flashes. All the way around here, all this area here, you're going to see 4 flashes. And then when you get to this line here, those 4 flashes, actually this line here, when you get to this line here, the 4 flashes will become 3 flashes, 2 flashes, 1 flash, and then obscured. So what's this little bit here? This is the red area, and I'll show you something else that explains why we've got this red area or this red light. So here's another little picture, and on this picture we can see here's the lighthouse. This is where the light will flash 1 to 4 times. 4 flashes here, 1 flash here. This is the obscured area. This is the 1 to 4, 1 flash here, 2 flash, 3 flash, 4 flash. All this is 4 flashes. You can see here this is all 4 flashes. But the red bit, or the red sector, this is a fixed light. It's not flashing, it's on all the time. And if you can see the red light, that means you could be going over the Shambles Bank. Now obviously if we're in close and we see the red light, we don't have to worry too much because we're in close, so we're not on the Shambles Bank. So that's why we mentioned earlier on, we're going to come up round about here, fairly close to the land, not too close, but fairly close to the land. And when we go through this red sector, when we can see the red light as well as this flashing 4 white light, when we see the red light, we need to be careful, because if the tide was to push us on here, it's going to become quite uncomfortable and quite bouncy. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the Portland Bill Lighthouse, so let's have a look what we're going to do now. We're going to come along here. You can see here we've got an R, which tells us this, it's a rock on the seabed, or it's a rocky seabed here, a rocky seabed here. So all this area tends to be quite rocky. And when we look on the coast, you can see all these symbols here, and they tells us it's also very rocky. So the local fishermen can get ashore in certain places here, but if you don't know the area, don't even try. So anyway, we're going to carry on coming around here. All looks very nice, freshwater bay, Cherbourg Cove, all sounds very nice. Two things to look at. First of all, you've got these 4 buoys in a square shape, if you like, and they've got an X on the top, which tells us that it's a special sign or special buoy. It means there's a special reason why this is here, and if we don't know what it is, we shouldn't go in there. Now typically a special buoy will mark a swimming area or a jet ski area, so obviously it's important to know whether it's for jet skis or for swimmers. It's not going to be good if it's for both. It could be a construction area, it could be, you know, military practice area for explosives, whatever. But in this one you can see there's a little power cable or cable coming to the shore to Grove Point, and we know just from local knowledge that this is special sensors, sound sensors underneath these buoys in this location. So a warship will go through here and the scientists will record the sounds that the boat or the ship, the warship makes as it goes through here, and so it'll have a recording, because each warship's got its own signature depending on the shape and size of the hull and the propeller. So British warships, for instance, will come through this area here. They'll make a recording of their acoustic characteristics, which helps the military do military type things and identify which are our submarines and which are someone else's submarines. And totally separate here is another warning or information. It tells us that there's high-speed craft. So it tells us that mariners are advised to be careful that there are high-speed craft, and in fact what this is the Condor ferries operating between the Channel Islands and France. And so these boats, they'll go along 40 odd knots, 800 people, 26 crew on board, 200 cars, quite big things going quite fast. So we have to be have our wits about us and keep our eye open and not get in the way of these things as they're going very fast. So let's make our way a little bit closer. Oh, we said we're going to a nice little marina, a harbour in Dorset, but there's this huge great big thing. And what's this? Well, this is Portland Harbour. This used to be a big naval base. It's very deep water. You'll put lots of warships in there, lots of commercial ships all down there. We'll look at that perhaps another day. As far as we're concerned, we're just going to carry on coming through here. We can see here this little cat's eye symbol. This is telling us this is where pilots board, and this will be where a pilot boards to go into Weymouth Harbour. You can see here there's another pilot boarding area, and this is probably for the ships coming into Portland Harbour. All these anchors, there aren't actually anchors there, but these are anchorages. These are nominated anchorages, and you might be told go and anchor at this place if you're a big ship. So we could expect ships to be anchored on these positions. So let's come in closer to Weymouth and have a look what we've got here. We've got a little area here that says no fishing. Well, they might have got something on the seabed that gets damaged if you go fishing there. You can see here's the anchorage areas, as we mentioned before. Now, as we're making our approach into Weymouth, the biggest thing to remember is get on the right side of the breakwater, because here's one breakwater, here's the other breakwater, and this side of the breakwater, lots of rocks. There's about the only dangerous rock in the area is called the Mixen rock round here, and we don't want to come anywhere near all this rocky area. So we really want to be coming in nice and wide, not cutting the corner. We want to come in nice and wide. And this magenta line here, this is the recommended track for the big ships to come in. So if there's any big ships coming in, we'd expect them to be following on this track. Now we can actually cut inside here, but we don't want to cut in too close. As I said before, there's lots of rocks here, and boats and rocks don't mix. So we can follow this line in if we wanted. You can see the water's gone from 30 odd meters further out in the channel to now only 5 meters, 6 meters, something like that. These berths here, this is where commercial ships tie up. This little area here is where the high-speed ferry comes in, and the high-speed ferry will back onto this area here and put a ramp down, and the cars will drive off the ferry over this ramp and into the parking area to be sorted off, and away they go off on their journey. So let's have a little look at Weymouth Harbour whilst we're down here. It says small craft mooring area. Now this is something again a little bit confusing. This area here is where the small craft is. This is where the big commercial craft are. So just because it says something on the chart doesn't mean it's always exactly accurate, and we've got to use a bit of common sense, and we've also got to use local knowledge if we've got it. Another thing I'll point out just whilst we're here, I mentioned that this magenta line, this purple line, to guide the big ships coming in, and we want the big ships to come into roughly this position, and you can see here we've got lights telling us, starboard side of the channel. Obviously this is the port side, but there's no light here. But once we get to this point, the dotted line says we don't really want to continue on there for the big ships because this gets very shallow. But you can see that the dotted line finishes at these 2 posts, and on here there's 2 lights, 1 light on each, red lights, and if you keep 1 light above the other, that means that we're exactly on this leading line. And we'll do another video about leading lights and leading lines later on. So we're going to just come along through Weymouth Harbour here. We've got private moorings here. This is Weymouth Sailing Club, they keep all their boats here. Commercial boats along here, and also we can have visitor moorings here. And sometimes if you've got some big motor yachts, the Sunseekers and the Princesses of the world, they might be 5 or 6 vessels alongside each other, coming out quite a long way into the channel. But we're going to carry on a little bit further. Here we've got more private moorings, again Weymouth Sailing Club moorings, pontoons here, more visitor berths here. We're going to come along here and we're going to have a look at this thing. And this is one of the great features of Weymouth. This is the Weymouth Harbour Bridge. You can see there's 4 light signals on each corner. This is 2 things. The cars are going to come across the bridge like this. When the bridge is open for shipping traffic, the actual bridge opens up, and these lights are going to turn red or green to tell the ships or the boats whether they should come in or they should stop and wait. When these boats are coming in, these lights will be green, and these lights will be red to tell these boats waiting to go through the bridge, you've got to wait here, let the other boats through first. When all the incoming boats are through, then they might put these lights to green, these 2 lights to red, and they let the boats out. So there we go, and there's more moorings. Look at Weymouth Harbour, so much to do in Weymouth Harbour. Lots of moorings. Here's the main town, but here's the nice area, some very nice restaurants and public houses if you want to come along, sit on the harbour wall, have a glass of ale, have a nice sandwich, watch the boats go by. This is a beautiful place.